Okay, I'd like to begin my response by saying I'm crushing my own head. I'm crushing my own head. Just kidding. All right. About this here Imus thing. People are angry. And as always, I ask myself, what are people angry about? Was it that somebody was fired? You know, I had a friend who was fired a few weeks ago, and millions of people around the world and country didn't rise to her defense and talk about how unfair it was. I thought it was unfair. You know, people get inflamed about race in the way that they get inflamed by nothing else. I think all this is what this is really about is people taking the opportunity to vent. You have a lot of angry people in this country, certainly in the world, but in this country, the United States, speaking as a citizen of the United States. And there are some traditional ways of venting your emotions, and one of them is to involves issues of race. Don Imus was fired for. Here's the thing: if Don Imus were fired for expressing a political opinion, I don't think anybody would have cared. And I base that on the fact that Phil Donahue was fired by MSNBC, and his ratings were good for expressing political ideas that were not approved of at the time. I suppose it was a marketing decision. MSNBC didn't want to appear too liberal. It was the beginning of the Gulf War. My goodness, Donahue was having Noam Chomsky on television. You know, you can't have left-wing intellectuals being interviewed in that time, as Gore Vidal says, known as prime. And of course they fired Michael Savage also for being an idiot. You know, people fire people all the time. So my contention here is that this issue has the level of attention it does because it centers around race. It is not an issue of freedom of expression. If it were simply an issue of freedom of expression in the abstract, then people would have coalesced around supporting Phil Donahue and Michael Savage, I dare say. If it were a matter of freedom of expression in the abstract, even people who disagreed would support that. No one has the right to be a multi-million-dollar radio star. The first rule of communications is to know your audience. If Don Imus has become such a poor communicator that he doesn't understand his audience, then he probably doesn't have the right to be on television selling soap or whatever it is these people do for their networks. He's free to go and work on his YouTube channel, just like everybody else. He can get his opinions out there. He's not being censored by the government. And so this is not an issue of freedom of expression. I don't know if Don Imus is a racist. I don't even care, to be quite honest with you. But I do know that, as I said before, you do not have the right to be a multi-million-dollar radio TV star. And I get the feeling here that that this is not about freedom of expression. It is not about freedom of opinion. It is simply that people are angry. Let me illustrate with a personal anecdote. I was in the car the other day with a friend of mine, the friend who had lost her job recently, and she was listening to the radio. Of course, talk radio, this polemicist on talk radio talking about nothing else but Don Imus and the Duke lacrosse team and so on. I once had a communications professor who said, the media does not tell you what to think, but it does tell you what to think about. And that is so true. My friend had concentrated all of her anger from her personal life onto these two issues. And as we drove along, she was commenting on them. And she saw a black person walking down the street, and she made a racist comment. And I had never heard her say anything like that before. It was really negative, you know. All of the negative feelings she had been feeling over the past few weeks built up and coalesced around this issue, this manufactured issue that's demanded her attention because it's everywhere. And it became the scapegoat, the emotional scapegoat for her. And I think that it's serving the same purpose for a lot of angry people, a lot of angry Americans, the same way that illegal immigration and so on does. People are just angry. So it helps to have somebody that's safe to hate. And so on. Anyway, this is about anger. It's not about freedom of speech.